Gold does not have a flavor.
Gold does have a flavor. The tallest, heaviest person among us is babysitting his fucking 40.
There's a cat that can drive?
Oh, yo, I'll take lap hand surgery. Come now.
What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 3 of the Lifting Libations podcast. Let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. I am Clyde Perkins, and to the left I got...
Clyde Perkins. Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm Jonathan, a.k.a. Jono.
All right, and to the right of me,
Yeah, Patrick.
and let's go down the line.
Wow, that was just way to introduce yourself. Hey,
That's why I ignored it. So
Jesus.
down the line.
Adrian Franco, servidor.
All right. Oh, and then, sorry.
And then
That was poor logistical planning on my part.
You listen to the past podcasts, you know who we are.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Hopefully you do.
If you haven't, we're not very good at this. Well, at the end, we do a better outro, so, stick around for that. Just listen to the whole thing.
And today we have a brand new addition. We have Caesar from Murray's. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Hello, I'm Caesar from Murray's. I'm the Beardy Caesar,
Not to be confused with Creeper Caesar.
or Mustache Caesar as he's now known. I'm the beverage director, the bar manager, whatever label you want to give me. Murray's is my little passion project. I want a cool staff. It's a bit like a co-op. We all contribute. We all have to compete, and just do what we do out there. It's really difficult kind of doing this in a side of town that really doesn't want it, but it's also fun and very fulfilling, kind of letting people know that this is something that El Paso is doing, and it's great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little about how you got into craft bartending?
It's going to be really weird, and I'll try to make it as short as possible. A couple years ago, I was introduced to the Burning Man Project, and kind of changed my output on basically everything.
So-
everything became DIY.
Let me interject here. What is the Burning Man Project, for those who
The
don't
Burning
know?
Man Project is where a bunch of hippies go out into the desert, and they basically live in one of the most inhospitable parts of the U.S., just to kind of have this kind of chance at this transformative experience. And believe it or not, I actually had one out there. Changed the way that I interpret, again, everything, because one is there's a lot of principles, self-reliance. There's nothing to be bought, sold, or traded, so you have to have everything prepared out there. So I took what I learned out there and applied it to my bartending, because at that point I was still flipping bottles. Flair was still a big thing. I was pouring vodka cranberries, and when I came back, I was like, well, there has to be a better way of doing this. And that's when I got introduced to crafts and kind of went off the deep end. I started making all my own ingredients. I started making proprietary liquors, and been nerding out ever since. And this was around 2011. I really got into the craft scene 2 or 3 years ago, and I started getting into competitive bartending, because mainly, one, there's only so much that El Paso and our colleagues can teach us. So I started going out of town specifically so I can get my ass kicked by guys in Austin, Dallas, so on and so forth. And I come back inspired, and now I'm trying to do this thing, cocktails with culture or cocktails with stories. It makes it a little more. At one point, we're all going to get badass at one thing. If we keep learning and we keep, doing what we're doing, bartenders tend to have their specialties. So to set myself apart, I like cocktails to have a little bit of an experience, a little story behind them, or a little culture. We're at the border region. I jokingly say that El Paso, it's not Tex-Mex. We're Mex, right?
Yeah.
Like we do queso very differently than the rest of Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We do
as
it the right
such-
way,
yeah.
basically.
And as such, I think
Fuck you, Austin.
the culture
And San Antonio.
So yeah, just a little bit of kind of nerdy stuff that I do.
All right, Caesar. So, who's your best bartender at Murray's?
Ding.
Steve is self-claimed the best bartender there.
Well, he makes a mean vodka Red Bull. I don't know.
Who got compliments last time? From those white people, remember?
All right. Well, I
You're a
mean,
big ass kisser. you're also a big shit talker. No one takes you seriously. You're like, did he really talk shit to us? Nah, this guy's just fun like that.
I take
No,
Dave seriously.
He made like 7 drinks for these people, and then the one drink I make for him because he was busy.
Oh,
he's
this is
like,
the-
"Oh, this is the greatest
This is
drink
the
I've
greatest
ever
drink you've had.
had." It was great. Fuck you, Caesar.
So as far as all the competitions, where you talked a little bit about competitive bartending, talk about some of the places you visited, and like what this is, or where this is taking you throughout your career.
All right, so for the most part, El Paso's strange because we don't have a USBG region out here, and many competitions are USBG sponsored.
Oh well,
As-
what's USBG?
Okay, so that's the Bartenders Guild. It's kind of a loose union. It's a nonprofit. It's mainly used for education and a platform for bartenders to kind of build camaraderie. There's a lot of educational experiences going on. And in bigger cities, a lot of the reps and liquor brands will attach themselves to the USBG for promotions. It gives us an opportunity to, one, offset our income with the competitions, and secondly, there's a lot of experiences. Like I'm just piggybacking off a trip to Louisville. Woodford Reserve set me up as one of the top 40 bartenders in the U.S. Mind you,
Congratulations.
I did absolutely horribly in that competition, but it was a great experience nonetheless. But I mean, this thing has given me the opportunity to go to New Orleans for Tales, basically on the dime of Liquor.com and Opier. I then won a national competition, a National Bartender of the Year that sent me to Morocco, which was absolutely life-changing. It was amazing. Again, it was kind of weird because it was like the day I got back from Burning Man, so everything still looked a little weird, and everyone thought I was on drugs, but it was great.
You were?
Yeah.
They weren't wrong, but
But yeah, other than that, my competitive regions tend to be, again, we're in the middle of everything. So I've gone to Phoenix, I've gone to Dallas multiple times. I'm about to leave to Austin in a few hours for another one that Liquor.com is doing for Monkey Shoulder. And with any luck, I'll be going to Oklahoma City for another one. So again, because I'm not in a USBG city, it's a constant drive, but I love the travel, and I hope to get to more nationals. Like, one, I want to go back to Louisville. So
What's,
everyone here that's doing Copper and Kings, like, bring it.
What's Monkey Shoulder?
Monkey Shoulder's a blended Scotch. It's the William Grattan Sons portfolio. It's a pretty solid portfolio, and this competition's kind of weird because there's no preliminaries. They basically have 5 rounds. It used to be called the Skills That Pay the Bills competition, and they test you on everything. They test you on knowledge. They make up this weird, like, periodic table of alcohol. Again, it's got a really strange format. Most of these competitions will present you with some sort of challenge, and the sponsors will give you the challenge. Some of them being make the simplest cocktail possible that can be replicated all over the world, which is the case for the Bacardi Legacy. Others will do the
glass,
exact opposite.
ice, water.
Yeah, pretty much.
Done.
Right. They want someone in South Africa to be able to read this. go to
Oh,
the
they
grocery
can't get
store.
that one then. They don't have water.
The ice might be a trick.
Do they have glasses? We just do glass. Is that
just any sort of glass.
yeah, okay, glass.
Um,
You leave it out, wait for the rain to come down. There you go. That's your cocktail right there. Replicated all
Some
over
like
the world.
white people in South Africa, It's not just like, actually
I have to
kinda
say,
nice.
this is our calmest podcast so far.
Yeah, it is.
it's that
I mean, I have
smooth,
to
velvety
respect some
voice.
racism
It's
there.
just okay. So for the record, we're just trying to get all the information put forward before we can no longer speak properly. So let's get
Yeah,
the
there you
important
go.
Also, I will
stuff out
say
of
this
the
is the
way.
mellowest we've entered a podcast because the first one everybody was already kind of lit, and then
Saucy.
the second one, yeah. So, but say everybody came in completely sober. Everyone's
Well, not
articulate.
completely. We have to have breakfast.
I am
right?
glad that there
Yeah,
wasn't
right.
any
We-
40s put in front of us because I got to catch a flight in an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Hey,
God,
Beef
I'm
made a
not-
good
Not
point.
flying
You're
the
not
plane,
flying
already
the
told
plane,
you,
yeah.
you're not
So
flying the
I
plane.
mean,
Good.
really, I don't see the problem.
I have a long beard and long hair. Like, getting
They're-
through TSA
they're
needs to be as streamlined as possible.
Fairly sure that picture in front of you, that's about 40 ounces, right? There you go. I mean, you're the newest.
We have a
If
pitcher.
anything, that's what we should do. The guests should just start off drunk.
Yeah,
Just
there you go.
Tree shaker.
No, yeah, that, I switched mine out for tree shaker because I need to loosen up a little
How
bit.
does that
but,
tree shaker taste?
like in general or this one in particular?
Compared to
That
other
one
tree
in
shakers?
particular. Yeah, compared to other tree shakers.
Tree shaker
Well,
being.
I don't really drink it that often, but it's actually pretty good. Here, I'll let Beef try it because he
Tree
actually
shaker's
knows
a
it's
fucking
very
All right,
amazing
good.
beer.
so since you
The
brought it
Cicerone
up,
And-
certified.
what is
This
tree
one's
shaker?
good.
Tree shaker? Oh,
Again, not everybody drinks beer, guys.
I know. But that's why it's good to catch stuff like this. So anyway, Tree Shaker is an IPA by Odell,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
and it's
Call-
peach, and I think it runs at what's the ABV on it?
7 point something.
7 point something. So, but it's like really smooth, really drinkable.
What's the aftertaste? Because for me, that's what kills IPAs. Is I love the forward taste of it, but once you're done and you finish it, it goes down smooth, but all of a sudden you get that hop taste that just slaps you in the face and it just doesn't go away.
See, I'm trying to pay attention to you, but I just realized my beer just went around like 5 people just had it right now. Like, everybody's backwash is like
Hey,
the
hey,
babas.
the alcohol will kill most of the germs.
Double herps.
Anyway, but no,
Not a thing,
there's not
dude.
really an aftertaste. It's really smooth. But
Okay.
but getting back to what we were
Just
talking
gave me, like,
about.
the dirtiest look. By the way.
But getting back to what we were talking about.
Like, if it makes you feel any better, John only stuck his penis in it once.
Oh well, it happened. Anyway,
You're welcome.
so there's a competition that I think you brought it up, Copper and Kings.
Yeah, that's going to be the next one that all of us are involved in. And what I mean by all of us is basically the entire Murray staff.
Okay.
Like it's the top 8 bartenders of Texas according to Copper and Kings. There's 6 El Pasoans, 5 directly from Murray's, and then we got a ringer.
A free agent.
Ooh, so wait,
Colin
so
Kaepernick of
who are
beers.
these 5?
Well, that's why
Murphys?
that's why I bring it up because
Murray's,
it just
not
so
Murphy's.
happens that Patrick here, as much as he's into beer, is also he's entered into the competitive bartending ring with this Copper and King. So tell us about your cocktail for that, because we were looking at it on Instagram and we couldn't figure out like what song it was
Yeah,
for
we knew
or what the
nothing
hell.
about it.
Just putting an air of mystery out there, you know. So, so the song is
Hawaiian punch,
El
guys.
Paso by Marty Robbins. It's just that classic.
You told me it
Classic
was "Hit Me
Western
One
song.
More Time" by Britney Spears.
See, just throw you off your game, you know.
Oh, all right.
So, and the whole cocktail is just made with ingredients that you can get actually right here in El Paso. It's primarily based off of Sotol and apple brandy.
Dude, I can get that anywhere in the U.S.
Are you-
Like, what
hold
are
on,
you
are
fucking
you-
talking about? What do you mean?
So
Ingredients you can only
Sotol
get-
grows right here in this region, actually, the northern part and the southern part of Texas only.
Are you gonna be able to replicate this somewhere else though? Because
That's not
just-
this competition, though. I don't need to go to
Yeah,
South Africa and shit.
no.
This
I'm
one's a
saying
different one.
which
Like,
one? Okay,
you don't
so
need to be able to replicate this. It's just be goofy. You see people dress up for this one. Technique's not all that important for this one as it is
Oh,
in
that
some of the
makes
bigger
more
ones.
sense.
It's all
Okay.
about a
So,
performance.
so you can dick
Yeah.
around a little bit. You don't have to go outright performance, but it kind of helps for personality points.
okay.
Um,
Is that why you got the steampunk glasses?
that's my life.
Dude, I like those. Those are great, by the way.
Again, I did mention that I'm a burner, right? So
Dude, I saw him from the moment I walked
these are
in,
props.
and I was just like, I'm gonna segue into mentioning them at some point in time in this. I don't know how, but I'm gonna do it because they're
That was one
fucking
of the
great.
best
I
segues
love
that
them.
we have had. So,
DIY is life, steampunk. Yeah, it's just part of it.
So Caesar, your cocktail, if I remember correctly, was based on a Motorhead song.
Yeah, it's based off of what the hell is it? I keep thinking of the Ace of Spades because of the way I'm holding this mic. Ace of Spades. But
I
no,
thought you
we're
were talking
doing.
about the champagne because you're getting like literally just thinking champagne. Man, that East Side's getting to me.
Man, okay,
You're
so
so
no, we're
late.
doing We Are the Road Crew, which I was actually listening to another podcast. I was listening to Cooking Issues by Dave Arnold, and he mentioned that basically his life as a traveling bartender is kind of like that of a roadie, and it really struck with me. And it kind of feels like that way sometimes because one is, again, as I mentioned, I'm not in a competitive region, so loading in, sleepless nights. There was a time, I think, when we both qualified for a competition and the rest of our staff qualified for Exotico. So I ran a shift, got in my car, drove to Austin, partied basically till I had to catch a plane in the morning to Phoenix, to the Woodford Reserve, won it, partied my ass off, flew back to Austin, and then completely hungover and like on no sleep at all. Kind of did not so good in that one, but then we had to drive back to El Paso. So I mean, I used to be in a band 10 years ago, and there's a lot
was
of
your band name?
similarities. Enemy 13. I'm sure none of you have heard of it. If you have, I'm sorry.
Was that like a subsidiary of Huawei's 13?
Wowies.
wow, he's 13.
First of all, can you stop using our real name and use our undercover name? Wallabies 12.
Silly me.
Wait, Wowies 13. Anything to do with the 13 hand jobs from the last episode? No, with the first
Episode
one.
13
one. Episode
blowjobs.
one, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
13 blowjobs.
It's
dude,
full
get it right.
circle.
Ah.
We have a segment.
Am I the only one who
and
listens to our
today's
content?
Wallabies
Is that
Christmas
what's
fair.
happening here?
What?
Am I the only one who listens to our content?
No, I listened to the first one. I mean, yeah. Don't even.
Apparently not.
Yeah, no, I did my homework. Anyway, so while we're at it, to get someone else talking here, Jono. So I saw this laying here, the Big Brew competition. I wasn't planning on talking about it, but I found it. Or not a competition, sorry. Homebrew in El Paso, right?
Yeah, it's just so Big Brew just passed. It was on Saturday, and this past Saturday, or yesterday.
Was it yesterday?
Yeah.
Shit, I
Oh
missed it.
man.
No. So
You didn't tell us?
nationally, it was yesterday, but we're having it next week here.
Oh,
So
okay.
not here, but at my
Having it
house.
10 years from now?
We're all
Is
being
El
assholes
Paso's
drinking
10 years behind
crappy
everything?
tequila.
And so essentially, what it is, we get together and we brew collectively as a homebrew club, and then we send it off to the National Homebrew Organization, and we say, hey, El Paso brewed 75 gallons of beer for homebrew, and then they just kind of put it on maps saying, okay, everybody brewed that day. But it's really just about to get together and talk beer and kind of learn different techniques, see different setups. And I like to invite the public out, and I like to have them come in and have them hopefully gain a respect for beer, because it's not like a lager. It's not easy to brew, and that's the most thrown to the side beer ever. Like, nobody wants to drink a Hofbrau original. It doesn't have triple the hops or anything. It's not Miller.
John, that's actually how you could tell if a brewery knows what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah,
You try
lager.
their lager. Because their
Ooh.
lager is garbage because it doesn't cover up any off flavors. So if their lager is garbage,
Yeah.
the whole fucking brewery is garbage.
Exactly. So yeah, we just like to educate the people, and the sad thing about this is a lot of people don't come. This is the 7th annual, and typically I get about 100 people, which is cool for my house, but it could hold more.
I've actually never been to one.
Yeah, CMB's never even been to one.
Womp, womp, womp.
But
We're all going next Saturday, right,
Yes,
guys?
next Saturday.
Sure
So-
are.
Yeah.
And
Damn.
we have a lot of
After
the
your
local.
graduation,
Enthusiasm.
That's where the after party's at.
There you go.
Oh yeah. Fuck.
We usually
You
bring
forgot
out
about that,
Das
didn't you?
Boots,
My
and then we'll
graduation.
fill that up, and then we have chugging contests with Das Boots. We have
Hey,
the
count me in.
German pub food truck coming out, and they'll be serving food. And a lot of the local breweries and distributors will be donating a keg. I'm not too sure about El Paso Brewing Company, though, because on Friday I put my 3 weeks in.
Oh shit! You're 3 weeks. Wait, where are you going?
It's a secret.
Oh, I mean, this isn't gonna come out for.
No, it's a secret. It's a secret.
Technically, you do have like 17 kegs from El Paso Brewing at your house, so there will be a keg from El Paso Brewing.
Okay,
You've been stealing all the supplies,
disclaimer.
man.
Disclaimer. They were growlers, okay? That's what we're calling them. They were growlers.
They were growlers. So you started this 7 years ago. What brought it about, man? Tell me about the origin of Big Brew.
So, growing up,
This is starting to sound like a legit podcast.
Yes.
Debauchery.
I'm missing this, madre. You know, I want Darren yelling. Cut it out!
That will
Cut
happen.
that shit out!
However,
Yeah,
there was
look,
one. There was a couple criticisms about the first time we did it, and one of them was that I was like, we were like drunk, so we tend to like laugh at shit, and once we did, like it just drowned out for like a good 10 seconds. You couldn't hear anything, like. So I
Let's
was
get
just
to
trying
laughing.
Hey, no,
Try
I
this.
personally
Try
like it. 'Cause I
this.
feel like it's good chemistry. We're having fun. It comes through. Whereas when you're just being like, and so I say to her, that's a thing. Ha ha ha. Anyway,
Yeah.
guys, and it's just like, all right, wait, hold on. Let's enjoy the
I
moment.
mean, think about it. We're not even like we're still not drunk, and we still managed to segue off of Big Brew. Like, not
That's
even
just-
trying.
But that's natural conversation. That's
Yeah,
that's how you know
yeah.
it's not scripted.
You gotta try this. Do it right now. this is a good entry.
See, already
Wait, okay,
segueing.
what is this again? You can't say this.
Okay,
on the
hold on,
radio.
hold on,
This
hold on.
doesn't come through.
We'll talk about this once he finishes talking about.
Yeah,
this.
hold on.
This is very special.
So-
it needs its own section.
So
God
essentially, I was working at Toro Burger, and I met this guy, and his name is Victor, because he is Indian and he cannot be known as his real name, because
Like
he's
Native
like
American or
he-
IT.
no, he's like IT.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so he's Victor, and he's like the arranged marriage, everything full fledged. His dad knows he drinks, but his mom. So, anyways, he came to America, and he was going to UTEP, and his friends were like, "Let's go to South Padre," and they went, and he was drinking Budweiser, and he was like, "I don't like this. This is horrible," and didn't drink again. And then his friend was like, "Let's go to Hemingway's. I'll show you real beer." He drank a Scotch ale, fell in love, and he's like, "I want to recreate this." So he started making beer. I met him about 3 years after at Toro Burger, and then from there we started to talk, and we chose to create a beer. And then from there we created this beer at my house, and that was the first Big Brew we had, where it was just me and him, or him and I, making beer, and people watching us, and we were drinking homebrew and just beer we'd never had before. And then we had moved from the 57 Las Brisas house. Those were good times, Beep, huh?
The best of times, the worst of times.
Yup. And so yeah, we moved houses, and we got a larger location, and I was like, I want to do it big. So I started the homebrew, or the Big Brew, and from there, people just started coming out, and local distributors, and at the time there was no brewery, so local distributors were just coming out and, handing us beer, and we had kegs, and people were just drinking beer, watching people homebrew, and having a great time.
All right, man.
Yeah.
It sounds it sounds good, dude. I appreciate you throwing this thing. Lift Libations, I will be there next Saturday to go ahead and cover it and enjoy some of the brews you guys got. But for now, we're gonna enjoy a brew that Beef brought.
It's actually not brew, because I didn't brew it.
It's a libation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess so.
I got to use my
So
name.
And he's lifting it right now. Oh,
Oh, did I tell you? Hold on, some cat came to the bar and he's like, "Can I get a libation?" And I'm all like,
that.
"What the fuck?" And he's
I
like,
want a
"Show me
libation.
Yeah.
He pulls out his phone and shows an Instagram. Like, I want the libation.
I was like, "That's a China girl," but it's a China girl is it's a cocktail that Caesar came up with. That's for part of the boy band. Anyway, we'll talk about that too. But yes, tell us about the libation that you brought.
So I actually got my hands on pure ethanol. So none of that like Everclear 98.7%. This is 100%. Like
This is the real shit
it's
right here.
like I don't think you could actually get this. I don't think you could buy it.
It's
It's
really
illegal.
sweet.
No,
It's
not
really
illegal.
sweet.
There's some transportation issue with it, but like you
it
can't just buy it.
explodes if it shakes too much because
Yeah,
it's
let's
pure
just shake the
ethanol.
shit out of it. It doesn't. No, it doesn't explode. I mean, the flashpoint of it is.
It's funny that Jenny got scared.
But the only reason I brought it is when in your life are you gonna try pure ethanol?
I mean, this is the second
mean
time I'm
right
trying
now.
it, so
No, you don't need like. It's because it evaporates as soon as it touches your lips, so you gotta drink it straight from the vial.
Oh man!
Oh,
the
straight from the vial?
You can
Yeah.
pour
We
it
ain't
out,
even
but it's
doing
got to be
that.
taken instantly.
Yeah,
It's a
so
very
it evaporates.
strange
Yeah, since
sensation.
it's so pure, it evaporates really quickly.
yeah.
Damn.
So and it's not chilled right now. So
So let's go
So
down
wait,
the
do
line
we want to
to
chill it then? So
Well, the
Oh,
shot
fuck,
glasses
there's-
are right there.
Chance to
Adrian,
fuck
you
it
could
up.
be the first one to try it.
Well, we got
I
the
swear
shot
to God,
glasses
though,
right
if
there
you
in front of
open it and
beef.
It's all gone. It all evaporates. Kicking your ass.
See, that's what I'm saying. Do we want to
Swigging?
chill it? To
Yeah, is
no,
that a
just
thing?
swig it.
Nah,
Yeah,
just swig it.
All right.
Little baby swig.
Yeah, do a
Here
little
we
baby
go.
swig. Don't kill the whole thing. So
So-
me, Jono, and actually Caesar have already tried this, but we'll let him live and in
Unscrewing
person
it. Take
his
a
reaction.
sniff.
Like the play-by-play by Patrick.
Ooh, that was a good face.
But it finishes sweet.
He's a little intimidated by it.
I mean, yeah, actually, I kind of like it. I can feel it burning my palate. I don't know if that's supposed to happen. But
It's pretty intense up front, but then you'll notice that once it starts evaporating, like your entire mouth gets warm.
yeah, and you can
Um,
actually kind of like feel like you're blowing it out. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I mean, Everclear has nothing on this thing when else.
Yeah, Everclear,
It's
like what makes
nice.
Everclear is horrible is all the impurities, but this has none, so it's not that bad.
So this is 100%.
yeah,
ethanol.
it's pure ethanol.
You were just breathing alcohol.
well, yeah,
Yeah,
You
you,
get
you weren't shitting. You weren't
That
shitting.
is-
Like,
That
You
was
could-
priceless.
Why is it barely like 3/4 of
I know the pussy has fucking swigs.
That's what, 20 centiliters?
You thought today was gonna be an easy day, huh?
I'll do this for the second time.
For the cause.
Hey, look at this man.
There you go.
man, he finished
Oh,
it.
mother of God.
So, so Beef is, what was your job again, man? I forgot.
Nerd.
Yeah, you're a nerd. But to that note, that's why I bring it up. Is because there's something that you're doing right now that you bought this book, Liquid Intelligence,
Dave Arnold's masterpiece.
right?
My boy, I'd blow him if I ever met him.
And then you brought his Spinzall, which is centrifuge essentially.
Yeah, it's the culinary centrifuge that he designed. I mean, he's got a handful of projects he's working on.
Is this sorry to interject? Is this the special centrifuge? Was this a cat who like saw the way centrifuges worked and he was like, oh, I don't like this. I'm gonna
he
make my
went
own.
and bought like a handful of them, destroyed even more of them. Basically, reverse engineered them to fit the purposes of bartenders and chefs.
Nice.
Now, I mean, there's two types of centrifuges for the most part. There's angular, and then there's the bucket centrifuge. Both have their pros and cons. For the most part, one's insanely dangerous if you don't balance, and the angular just don't have volume like the ones you see in movies. So he took the best of both worlds and designed and engineered this. I mean, it is made in China for manufacturing costs.
Of course.
He wanted to kind of bring the cost down for the hobby bartender.
They're still fucking expensive as fuck.
Yeah,
though.
I know. They're still about
How
a
much are
grand.
they?
Yeah,
So
like,
this
Jesus.
is
Jesus.
not. You need to have the backing. Luckily, I mean, I work at I work part. Oh fuck that fucking shot.
Kids, that's why you don't do 100%
Here we are.
ethanol. That is exactly what is that,
so-
like 45 seconds after taking it?
Yeah.
Straight to the head.
His mouth is trying to like
So
salivate. Just
yeah, I got a dry mouth right now. So no, I'm fortunate enough to be part of a bar family where there's 6 or 7 bars in our family, and we're the craft bar. And as such, I basically have a bigger budget than most bars my size
Nice.
because my boss basically just wants us
Thank
to
you,
be
Dickie.
able to produce some
If you ever
amazing
listen
stuff.
to this, probably not.
So we had
So
some good
you-
numbers last year, and gave him an Amazon list, and he's like, "Oh, buy it all." I was like, "The $1,000 centrifuge." So we were making
Nice.
some really great stuff with it. It's fun stuff, man, and it's great
We
having
should actually
beef.
talk about that. Like, I feel like we haven't spoken to the fact of how badass we are at Mary's. We're not just your regular craft bar. We actually use science and our back wall. I'm pretty ashamed to say this, but I didn't notice it until this girl told me. It's like, hey, did you guys set it up like a periodic table on purpose? And it was like,
Yes, we totally did.
yeah. No, actually, I mean, we should talk about that. How we're all kind of just pushing the envelope with drinks
So,
and.
so you guys are like mixologists on steroids.
First of all, I hate that fucking term.
That's what you are.
No, because like
It's a bit of a
mixology-
buzzword amongst craft bartenders because one is, I'm sure people agree with this. Most people who identify as mixologists have no idea
What
how
it
to
is.
properly balance a cocktail. One is, although we're not all scientists like Beeve, we do employ the scientific method in creating our cocktails. In that, one is we'll spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to replicate cocktails, worry about ice dilution rates, even just citruses. Like currently, I'm trying to learn how to do. We figured out how to bricks, like adjust sugars to all act the same. Now we're trying to get different acids to do the same. So I mean, you ever wonder why lime juice and lemon juice are interchangeable, but you can't throw in like pineapple juice or grapefruit juice?
They have the
It's
sugar
it's
content.
a difference in acidity as well. So we're learning how to balance that so they all act the same. It's a really advanced technique. You have to use food grade stuff.
So to the average person, you're no longer a bartender then.
Yeah.
You're
So
like
that's
No,
what sets
but
us
no,
apart.
fucking mixologist. The thing with a mixologist, he's some like cock ass dude who has a fucking YouTube fucking channel who makes shit at home. But at the end of the day,
Beeve is
like,
Was that a
triggered.
direction?
Beeve
anyway,
is
never
triggered.
mind. I'm not gonna go there.
you have a
But-
YouTube channel?
I mean, we have a
No,
YouTube
no,
channel.
no,
but we're
I'm
making
not
shit at
talking about
home,
it.
Beef. Thank you.
But-
That's cool, bro.
So did mixologist become like I guess a derogatory term because of the people, or
Yes, because of the people. Because
There
at
was-
the
there
end
was
of the
too
day, you're
much
still
douchebaggery
tending to a
involved.
bar. I still gotta like, I can make a fancy ass fucking drink, but I still gotta deal with that fucking drunk at the corner of the bar.
But here's the
One thing,
thing.
cranberry
No,
soda,
but here's the thing. I
cranberry
see it
vodka.
this way. I see bartending and mixology is maybe two different things. Bartending is the whole like job in general. Like you're making drinks, but you're also dealing with customers.
Right.
You could be a mixologist and not even have to deal with customers. You could just mess with alcohol, basically. That's what I. That's the way I think.
Well,
I
see,
see it.
that would,
Or
that
you
would,
can be
that would
really
make sense if
specialized
you work
in
for like William
something.
Grattan Sons as a corporate mixologist. That term applies. If the hospitality part is removed, I'm totally okay with that term. Because I mean, that's your job. Your job is to create cocktails. You mix things and you produce content for portfolios for specific brands. So as a corporate mixologist, that's great. But again, as I mentioned, the people that we meet every day, the people that we go to bars that say they have degrees. I had this great
Wait,
guy.
there's degrees in mixology.
It's an online course. You can take multiple
All right,
ones.
no, well, then
but
no.
we had a guy that impressed the living hell out of me when we were shorthanded, and I was like, yay close, a little tiny amount here, yay close to hiring this guy. And on the way out, he said, "Hey, when I bring my resume, I'm going to bring you all my mixology degrees." And I couldn't help it. I mean, verbatim, don't tell me that shit, bro. Like, don't tell me that.
Dude, I was about to hire you, dog. You fucked up.
And,
But
I,
no,
mean, I agree with BV. I think it's one of those things where I actually decided to get a rice out of you. But yeah, mixologist just it was that term that got coined, and all of a sudden everybody started to use it because everybody was afraid of I guess it was that like social justice moment where like I can't just be a bartender anymore. Call me a mixologist. Like I want to stand
It's a fun
out.
term. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it's fun when we yell it at people when we're
yeah.
making vodka
So
water.
Mixology.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is there any way to identify you differently from like, let's say, another bartender at a shitty bar who doesn't know how to make any basic cocktails? They just know like maybe, hey, I can make a Jack and Coke. Like that's a
Skills?
cocktail to
Here's
them.
the thing. Mixology, it's very much one of those things where that's our word. That's our term. So
You can't say it.
Yeah, you can't say it.
Another word I can think of. I've never heard this before.
I had this conversation in Africa. They
Hold on.
called us
In Africa.
Some of my best friends
Darren's
are
like, oh my God, it's
mixologists. Do I
coming
get
back.
say it?
Wakanda forever.
I'm alright, right?
we
It's
had
cool.
some friends. There was a really great bar in Marrakesh. It's actually one of the best in the world that I've experienced, called Barometer. And their head bartender asked us, "What is the deal with this mixology?" Because like everyone is a mixologist. He's like, "What do you think about this?" And basically, it came down to, we all kind of agreed. We had half an hour conversation about this. Is that in our terms, we call ourselves bartenders. However, to the layman, to the people who don't know as much as we do, which I mean, for the most part, our customers don't study the way we do. Maybe
Right.
they may drink complex drinks. They may know what a Manhattan is,
Right.
but they don't know all the intricacies, and they don't know the back of house as far as all the processes that go into the drink making. For them to call us mixologists, to separate what we do compared to what their dive bar bartender does or what Applebee's does, I'm okay with that, right? But you'll never hear me call myself that.
Right.
There you go.
Mm.
So
And to that degree, I see that there's levels of acceptability.
So what's the worst cocktail bar?
Oh, we got into this. I think we actually talked about this before, but we'll bypass that question for now.
So I feel like this is like chef, right? Like
Yeah.
chef is
I
a
really
term
want to
that
answer that though, Jonathan.
anybody that
Whoa.
graduates from culinary school, they can have. Right?
One of the newest
term.
terms is going around is bar chef, but it's receiving the same resistance in bigger cities, especially with the USBG, like bar chef. It's like we're trying to fluff up, this we're bartenders, like this is what we tend bar. So why not? I mean, it's the simplest way of describing what we do, and in cities with the USBG, the scope and the mission of what they're doing is to elevate the level as a whole. It's not like El Paso where, I mean, we have some great craft bars. Everyone has their identity. Everyone
worst
has
one,
their
though?
specialty.
Right.
Yeah, what's the worst
Here-
one?
What's the
here's
worst
the
one?
thing.
This
We,
is
we
kinda
all
like
have our
when-
faults. Every single one of the craft bars in town has their strengths and weaknesses, right? Case in point, I used to run, and I don't mean like run, but when Alex wasn't there, I was a principal bartender at Tradecraft. And when I was there, you want a mean classic cocktail, you go there. You ask for a modern cocktail, they're going to hiccup, right? Because that bar is not set up to do that. Likewise, there are some bars in town that really specialize in presenting, this experience with a lot of ingredients. That's not my particular style, but if their customers are about it, then there's nothing wrong with that. However, our cocktail bar, again, I think Darren had mentioned the idea of pop-ups. We do really weird things. I'm also completely open source. I'm one of the few bars that doesn't require you to sign a non-disclosure, and I actually hand out my draw list to customers. Hey man, what's in this? How can I make this? You know what? Here's my draw list. Take a picture because in 2 months it's going to be off our menu. I'm
And
probably
that's
not going to make
really
that cocktail for 2
fucking
years.
Every
awesome.
time I
Dude,
that's
that's
work
great.
there on the regular at Murray's, but every time I go in there, I feel like we get more and more ridiculous, and it's awesome. Like the other day, I found bee pollen. What the fuck are you guys doing?
Well, the thing is, because I made a cocktail for the David Bowie pop-up menu called "Oh You Pretty Feiglings," and it incorporates fig liqueur, Baron Jaeger, like honey, and then almond milk and cardamom. And I created the cocktail, and then I think it was you? I think it was you who said, "Hey, throw some bee pollen on that shit." And
No,
then-
it needed a pop-up texture. I mean, because it had this very honey, very it kind of like a really rich bee's knees kind of look to it. I was like, it would be great if we threw some texture on there, and throwing a flower on top's not enough.
yeah,
again,
and see, and that's the.
Man, what happened with like the classic, just drawing a dick on top?
But see, but that's the great thing about.
One of those straws has
So
like a
what was
dick
that
at the end.
cocktail called with the bee pollen?
So that's the "Oh You Pretty Feiglings." Again, it's one of Darren's creations, and again, I'm there to kind of act as a quality control. As much as, again, I say that we operate a co-op. Everyone there has their own thing to bring to the table. I'm not going to teach you technique because for the most part, it'll show through with the cocktails. However, one thing that I like about my bars, I mean, the classics are simple, right? The modern cocktails that we do, the cocktails with culture, the cocktails that have a story behind them, I also want them to look amazing. Again, that's one thing that I've taken back from my experience in cocktail competitions. I've lost the competition because, one, I didn't taste the cocktail. I've lost the competition. No, seriously. Like they're like,
How do you not taste
Come on,
it?
why would you not taste your cocktail?
See, this sounds ridiculous, but here's the thing: if it's a cocktail I've made 1,000 times before, it's assumed that.
No,
Yeah.
never.
No,
Look,
Yeah, no, I'll have to agree with him
No.
on
Never,
this.
never,
I will agree with
never.
him on
But-
this.
but-
I don't taste
I
like
love
vodka
cookie.
waters.
Never once.
Notice this. Notice how everyone has a different opinion. This in the craft scene is also contested, right? But I now know that if it's a USPG competition, you have to do it, if only for formality.
I'm an alcoholic, so any chance I get to taste
Yeah.
alcohol,
Amen.
Like,
No,
let's say it's a
Buzz.
four cocktail or it's a 4 ingredient cocktail, right? And it's a cocktail. Not only that it's really simple, but it can be a cocktail that's very forgiving, right? Like you can go over and under, and for the most part, unless you have like this really like extreme awesome super palate, most people aren't going to notice,
yeah,
right? But again, I've now learned that you have to do that, and as such, I bring that back, and I'm starting to integrate it into the cocktail program. Another thing is every cocktail has to have like I want people pulling out their phones when they see a cocktail,
Yeah.
right? So if it's a cocktail that doesn't traditionally have a garnish, I might throw a garnish on there. Now you
So
can
I have
call me
to-
extra, but
I have
you know
to
what?
stop you real quick there. I have. So you said even though you make it 1,000 times, you
Yeah.
kind of just don't want to do it. I make beer. I don't care if I brew it 1,000 times. I make sure that I taste it through every stage just to
That's
make sure.
different though.
I may
It's
be
not.
showing my
It
ignorance
is
here.
not.
Very different.
No, it's not because
However-
each time it doesn't matter whether it's a large scale or a small scale. As you, the producer of this, you have to make sure that that product that you're putting out is up to par to your liking, because your liking
Damn,
is.
you must not try a lot of your beer.
What's
Just
up?
kidding.
Damn!
No,
Hey,
no,
I've
but the
stepped
thing
it
is-
up. I've stepped it
Yeah,
up.
yeah. You actually changed a lot of the recipes at EP Brewing, or
So,
did something different.
But I feel like even though I'm making tacos or whatever, like just for my kids or anything like that, I taste it because I want to make sure that it's not bad or it's
Yeah.
not.
But you're brewing. That's actually using like something that's not in your control for the most part.
But
it's
it's-
a live.
But
it's a
dilution
li-
rate
let me say
sometimes
this
isn't
much.
this,
Okay.
you know?
With brewing, with cooking and whatnot, I am taking one grand assumption with the idea of me not tasting my cocktails and my general problem with this, like, you know, this problem in the competitions
Yeah.
is that we assume that the products that we're using are going to be identical. Now, I know with brewing, there's a million factors, cross-contamination. There's
Yeah.
a lot of things that, you know, your grains are going to be different, sometimes from a different supplier, whatever the case may be. But if I'm using the same vodka, the same this, that's a grand assumption we're making.
Right.
Now, typically, when it's clear spirits, whatnot, we're safe on that.
But
Yeah.
no,
but
hold
I
on,
know
but-
we've all
but
experienced
think-
bad
think about
batches
the
How
of
many
bottles.
times have
Yeah.
you all made a margarita?
Yeah.
They're all gonna be the fucking same. You don't need to worry
No,
about it. You
no.
don't need
Or-
to taste
hold
every
on, hold
single
on.
There-
No,
margarita.
there's
no,
also
no,
something
no,
that
no.
I teach at my
I'm
bar.
gonna fucking throw my hat down on this and say that is bullshit because, let's say, yeah, you're using the same vodka every single time, right? And you're gonna say, okay, the company has it down packed to where they're whatever.
That's the trust that we give our,
yeah,
you know, the
whatever
suppliers that
method
we get.
it is that you to create this is 99.9% perfect, and
Yeah.
it's gonna, you know, that vodka's gonna taste the same every time. That's cool. But what about the bottle it comes in? If the bottle has imperfections, it might pour more or less on. Let's say you have like the best muscle memory ever, right?
Yeah.
And this is why you don't want to taste things because you're like, okay, 3 seconds is gonna be what I need. I don't need to use what's the little.
Oh,
measuring cup
well, for the
thing
most
called?
part,
For a little jigger.
we jigger everything
Yeah.
that's on menu
Right, but let's
because
say
it's that
again,
precise.
but
Yeah.
you don't know, you know,
Amateur over
you're like,
here.
it's just one of those things where there are so many things that are out of your control. Even if you think like, okay, I'm getting this, I'm getting that, and the same things I use, blah blah, environment. There's always something that can
But the thing-
throw.
but
Here's the
That's
thing, though.
different
Like
than
companies
lines.
have their own like quality control. Like just for an example,
why I have a job.
Pappy Van Winkle.
When have
Yeah.
you
Like
heard
how
of
they
a
have like
bottle
their
being
lot
quality
B or
controlled,
whatever, or like there's like when companies distill liquor, they actually like release batches that are imperfect that didn't make it to like the final. So they have their own quality
At
control.
a huge
So
markup,
Right.
mind you.
But-
yeah,
Yeah.
so
But that batch doesn't go. I'm saying I'm talking about. I know this is a little bit ridiculous, but I'm going to the extreme, right? This is again the bottle, the bottle that it's bottled in, redundancy aside, is not quality controlled. It's not checked. It's like, all right,
No,
this
no, no,
bottle
no.
is not
but
cracked.
here's
No,
the,
but
no,
the
here's
thing-
another
Even
thing too.
that is actually
Companies-
quality controlled. Even the bottle is.
Well,
Look, you're going
at a- not-
way
not
too
at
far
a-
out there. You're
not
going
at a
way too far out there.
level.
Look,
no, I agree
No,
with
no,
you.
because
Guns
okay,
down.
beer. Okay, something like beer, right? If
I
you
agree
serve it in
with
a
you.
glass and you see all the bubbles popping up when you're drinking it, all the little bubbles come from the imperfections in the glass.
Yeah.
And that's why glasses can change the taste of beer. And this is something
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know. They just think it's like, oh, you know, they just like serving this fancy glass for me because they get to charge me more for less beer. And no, that's not it. Is whoever brewed this tried different glasses.
No,
And
but
they
the thing is,
thought-
I agree with you. But there's some liquor companies that we drink it so much, I can taste the subtle like imperfections in it. There's an acceptable range of to good or
That's
bad.
exactly
Yeah.
what I was going to mention.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At
and
one
the
point,
thing
that
is-
range might change
Yeah.
based on what we're doing. Like I've agreed that, you know what, if this is within acceptable range, I won't need a taste. But in really delicate cocktails or delicate styles of beer, I'd imagine that gets a little more narrow.
Not only
But
that,
also-
but
Exactly.
like,
There's
say,
so-
for
Murphy's
instance,
Law,
like,
you never
just
know.
take-
That margarita
Just take
we
an
made
old fashioned,
1,000
for
times.
example.
Yeah.
Just take an old fashioned, for example. Like, okay, so maybe the taste of whatever bourbon you're using, like Bullet, might change.
Yeah.
But you're accentuating that flavor with sugar
make
and
sure you
sometimes
get it in.
citrus, and then 2 different kinds of bitters. So whatever change might have happened,
That
like
is-
from year to year,
Excuse
it's
me.
probably buried
Hold on,
under
that is
like.
that is a perfect example. Now, old fashioned has a big old ice cube.
But here's the thing
in the
too:
middle, right?
old
Hold on.
fashioned differs from bar to
I mean,
bar.
you
You
get
get
it
it
at
at
Lloyd's.
that.
There's a lot of ice
even if you
cubes.
make, even if you make, let's say you have one bottle of bitters, one bottle of the liquor you mentioned.
Bullet.
Clearly, I'm not the bartender in this.
Boulay.
I'm, just,
Yeah,
I'm the resident
clearly.
nerd. Is what I do.
Neither is
Not
Patrick, so you're
chemist
good.
nerd, just like other type of nerd.
General.
You're that
general
customer
nerd.
we hate. We're just like,
Yeah.
God damn it, for real, bro.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm just a guy who's
Just
like,
drink the fucking
I
shit.
want fresh lime juice. Well, we squeeze it, but I want it fresh.
can I, can
No,
you,
that
can
was
I
a
get like
conversation
2
we
parsley
had.
leaves and 1 cilantro leaf, not the other way around? Because I
Yeah.
won't throw this cocktail away. Yeah.
Well, throw it in your
The
face.
ice, right? The ice that goes into that is a big component, and it
Yeah.
most of the time it takes up like 80% of the glass. When you have a really nice old fashioned, people know how to do it. They cut the ice for you, and it's beautiful. Ice is one of those things that can absorb a lot of flavors and a lot of odors around it, and it can change the way things taste as soon as you drop it into
But the thing is,
something.
but there's very few people who could actually like tell the
Differentiate.
difference of a bullet, like Bullet, Jameson, Wild Turkey. They all have varying flavors. But the only reason I know, and most of these guys will agree with me, I think, is because we drink it so much. I could tell the subtle differences in it. The normal customer who orders a drink, like a margarita, a old fashioned, they can't tell because
Right,
they don't
right.
drink it as much
Yep.
as us. So there's
that
an
was okay.
acceptable
So
range.
that's where my point was going. Is at the end of the day, the people who are judging these competitions,
Those-
I'm just saying,
Have-
me, I
have
would
that-
want
have that
people
attention to
like
detail.
me
Yeah,
who
exactly.
have that specific palate, who can really discern. You know what? Yeah, all of you make great drinks, but you made a fucking outstanding drink.
Yeah,
because you
it's
took
it's the
that
little
extra-
details that
yeah.
separate us, and honestly, that's one thing that I'm trying to do with my bar. Case in point, we're mentioning the idea of like levels of acceptability within cocktails, and the idea is we want to have as much control over the cocktail as we possibly can. This is the reason why I've recently changed my recipe for the old fashioned because I mean like the old way of doing things is the granulated sugar or sugar cubes, but then you get these raw sugar cubes and you realize they're all different. Now there's this romantic aspect to that. That's a very Pacific Northwest. You go to Portland, certain bars in New York actually they free pour everything. They'll bring a glass to their eyes, and again, it's great knowing that every cocktail has this malleability. However, it makes it seem more artisanal. But as craft cocktail bars start becoming more of the norm in both bigger cities and slowly in El Paso, we're going to have to streamline the process. Like, I may not have the time to grind granulated sugar anymore. So as such, I've now made, like a 1-to-1. I've actually refined my methods of making simple syrup. I don't grab a cup to a cup anymore because then I think of saturation. I think of density of, the sugar. So now I've got a scale.
We make a lot of old fashions if you can't tell.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
fuck
So-
so,
I mean,
you
that-
go to
that's
a bar
great.
and
That-
I
order
got a
old
question
fashioned.
real quick. What's the difference between a larger city and El Paso? Because El Paso is a pretty large city.
Yes,
So
we
what's
are.
the
I think
difference
we're
But
between
bigger
we
than
don't
Austin.
have the large city mentality.
And
There you go.
what it is,
See,
it's,
that's
it's,
what I'm
it's a
trying to-
culture, all right? And it's just as much our fault as it is that of our reps. The city as a whole has placed, I guess, our trust in alcohol and alcohol serving, and just I hate saying this, but El Paso, we're a bunch of alcoholics, and we like.
Oh no, we've been saying it for.
I mean,
like
as we
3
said in
episodes.
this podcast
Yeah.
several
We
times.
literally
You're
just
fine.
start a podcast
there's
based on
a
alcohol.
thing that
Also,
I
are we
mentioned.
not the number 2 for DUIs in the country?
It's up there, man. But here's the thing:
So-
like, think of how many times those, don't get reported, or they're like, "Hey, you're drunk, but you're not that drunk. I've got paperwork to do. I've got happy hour at 7 a.m." Like,
Yeah.
it's
At
systematic.
Adrian's.
It
Yeah,
really
like-
is.
I was next to when I was registering for like EPCC when I started college again. The guy next to me, he was all pissed off and he's all like, "Fuck!" And I was like, "What's wrong, man?" Well, this class is only available at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I like to get fucked up on Monday nights, man. And I was like, "Jesus!" Like, he's like scheduling it as
He's
around.
scheduling over his alcoholism.
Yeah.
Going back to the difference, one of the biggest things you'll notice in going to craft bars, one is if you've ever been to Murray's. I mean, we're craft, right? I mean, we're dive craft. We've got crappy beer. We've got great beer. We've got crappy whiskey. We've got $80 whiskey. One of the things that I have to take into consideration is how ridiculous my customers get after they've had one or two, right? Things have to be bolted to the walls. You know, I have to get special candles because if I don't, they're gonna get poured on the bar. Things will get lit on fire, right?
We do get a lot of ridiculous people
there's
there.
no
Yeah.
there's no etiquette that's taught because for the most part what we've been introduced to being so close to the border is that you go to a crappy place for the crappiest beer. I call it the buzz to buck ratio, right? You want to get that highest
Nice.
yield. You want to spend $5 and get wasted.
Can we get a hashtag
Right.
for that? Bust
So
the buck ratio.
Buzz to buck ratio. So when you go to another city, another thing too is this peer pressure thing. You know, like Beeb and I from the Northeast, and you'd get
We're
called
actually
out.
all from the Northeast.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, you want to be cool?
Good for us.
All of us.
All of
All of
us.
us.
But you know, you go to a house party, and the idea of a DD is that you get crap, you get shamed. In other cities, you don't see that. Even at Murray's, like this is a craft bar, and you see 55, 6-year-old people. Oh, you're not gonna get an old fashioned, you little bitch. Like, come on, man. Like, if you go to another city, I can have one cocktail, and the bartender's not pushing it down my throat, right? Whereas here, I think having that background of like the nightclubs kind of mess with us a little bit, and I have to actively catch myself not doing that. So it's a culture that El Paso's kind of it's this environment. Again, it's systematic from law enforcement to the reps to the bartenders. We're taught this is the way we drink, right? And another thing, I like that you have this lifts and libation because you're pushing this kind of health agenda as well. When more often than not, it's like the party atmosphere. I mean, this is an industry where you can give everything, but you can also lose everything. You know, if you end up drinking too much. Like I know
Yeah.
a lot of friends. I think sorry, Dickie, I'm one of the few males in my company without a DWI, and most have 2 or 3.
You better knock
Right?
on wood
And
right
again,
now.
that shows that says a lot. You know, like in bigger bars in bigger cities, they'll ask you, "Do you have a DWI?" Yes, cool. You're not qualified to work for us, right? They take their jobs very seriously. If you go to Vegas, party capital city of the world, right? Flair bartenders are all sober.
And I think I talked to you about this before. Didn't we take a lot of our like drinking culture from like Phoenix, like Mill Street, and like that big party bar,
No, I think-
champagne,
The library
we
and
took it
everything.
from
bottles,
Juarez.
all that shit.
This is I know it sounds ridiculous. This is a hangover effect from Prohibition. You know, like we drank like Europeans pre-Prohibition. We didn't drink to get drunk, but the second you make it illegal, we drink in excess because we don't know when the next time we're going to get it, right? And that culture that came from that. I mean, how many years has it been, and we're still drinking? Like we're never going to see it again, right?
I'm not
Damn
too sure
right.
if it's around here though, because we were able to go.
Yeah,
right
we were
across
able
and-
to. But here's the thing: as underagers, we still had that mentality that we can only get it once a week. This is something bad.
No,
We-
well, not only that, that goes back to the bus to buck ratio because you
Yeah.
go across the border and you're like $1 in El Paso gets me nothing, $1 in Juarez gets
so
me a
like
bucket.
modern, especially in our region, I think
Yeah.
that hangover still exists. That,
get that,
you know,
okay.
as a 16-year-old, you wanted to look cool, so you went across the border and spent $10 because you sold candies during lunch or whatever the case may be, and you just got as trash as
Shout
possible.
out
You
to
bought some
those,
paletas.
those
Yeah.
soccer
Yeah.
players that had the
Sold-
Mexican candies.
I had a
Why
shoebox
were they-
in high school. I would go
That's
spend
what's
$50
up.
in Juarez and flip it for $300 in my high school. Like it was insane, man. I was a hustler.
That's
So would you
what's
say
up.
that that kind of influenced us the fact that we could actually go to Juarez when we were like 17, 18, go to the Derby, spend $20 and get completely fucked up, and here we are grown up talking about alcohol?
Here's
No,
the
but
thing,
the thing is that I think all those people who used to do that, I mean, it's not a thing anymore, but that's what literally all the bars in El Paso are.
But yeah, it
They're
taught
strict.
us that that's the model.
Yeah. We're not, there's no clubs in El Paso. There is, but they're not
They died
popular.
The
down
idea of the club
real
is
quick,
dead
like-
in El Paso.
Yeah, it's a bar with loud music, and that's what the Derby and all that thing was.
Mind you,
wasn't a club.
it took some movers and shakers in El Paso to get to that point. I think the Three-Legged Monkey was one of the first bars to kind of change that mentality. When that was open, there was still Union Plaza. There was still nightclubs. You dressed up. You went downtown. At a certain point, we realized, you know what? Are people going for the drinks or the music? And when we realized it was the music, we would just pay those DJs double to go to a neighborhood bar, and people would drink more because they could get drunker being closer to home. So again, it's this culture that we've ingrained. Like it's like we're just drilling ourselves to be it's consumer culture. And again, in cities that they're a little more wise to that, you see more responsible drinking. You see, especially more responsible serving. Like you will get fired if you overserve once. in
Yo,
any
it
other
just sounds
city.
like El Paso's a badass fucking city to
No,
go.
it is. This is a party
here.
city, but this is
Drink
also
here.
why craft is very slow moving in this city because one, this culture that we have, people tend to look at us as like, okay, these are the snobs, and one is I'm okay with that label. but I'm also wanting to show you something different, and I can do it in a presentable and, more importantly, an affordable fashion, right? But again, talking East El Paso, I still have to sling Bud Lights because people will treat themselves to one drink and then revert back to what they think drinking is or should be, right? And it's the task of all of us, and I think the reps should be doing a little more of a job. But the idea is, they make a lot more money selling, the well stuff than they do the Pappies out in this region. Like, it's niche. I mean, the fact that you can go to Juanitos and get stuff that's on a lottery system on the East Coast, like, I like that, but in bigger cities, you just don't have that option. So it's fortunate that I'm able to do that because my back bar is amazing. I've got some really great stuff.
Yeah, and I'll attest to that. There's a lot of different bottles. Like when I got there, when I got there, you guys were doing something called the 7 Deadly Gins, where you were featuring a different gin every
31 gins on my back bar. I think I'm the only.
Bro, remember when we first opened up and they're like, we would go through so many Plymouth gin bottles because no bar on the east side has gin. Like, that's not a thing. Like, which is
It's like a
fucking
Guyana bottle.
mind-blowing.
It just sits back there.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing on the west side of town, which is not even that far. But, like, no one has gin. So when we first opened up, people were like, oh, let's make you a drink. And they're like, oh, just don't use gin. So what would we do? Use fucking gin.
We were trolling.
Yeah, we would.
Let's talk about that. Let's say why gin? Talk to
Because
you.
gin is fucking.
Gin's
If you
fucking
don't listen
magical.
to Snoop Dogg, gin and juice, you consider it pretty much an old person.
I
drink.
take anything I hear in rap songs with a grain of salt. So
Hey,
give it to me
fuck
straight
you.
from the horse's mouth.
No, but like
Why should I start looking at gin in a more respectful way?
Because I'll break it
If
down
someone
like
offers
this.
me gin,
Vodka is just basic alcohol. There's no flavor to it. A good vodka is just going to be basic. But a good gin, you're going to have a lot of little different nuances in it, and you can work it many different ways. It's a flexible drink, but yet a really complex drink. At
Yeah,
the
you're
same
like
time.
rapping right now, Patrick. You were literally like.
Let them rap, man.
Yeah, man. Let me just do my fucking thing.
So what are you saying? Gin is what now?
I'm just I want to hear all that. Is as a person who I'll be honest, I don't drink a lot of gin. So next time I go to a bar, why should I consider gin over other things? Or in the future, if someone offers me something gin based, why shouldn't I make a frou-frou face and be like, oh, I don't drink gin? So talk to me about your love for gin, because episode 1 you were all about your love for gin. So
No, he actually bought his love for Bush.
but
no,
I also like
because
gin 'cause of-
because it tastes like gin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
so
you
tell me all about it.
Gin
Tell
is
me,
fucking awesome.
tell us why.
So okay, the reason
it's
I
important.
when I was a bartender, I was a bartender for about like 2 years, and I been serving gin and everything. Well, pretty much all the booze. And one day, a fellow bartender, we went to some shitty ass dive, but they had gin on special because I guess they're trying to get rid of it. And I was like, he's like, hey, let's get some gin and tonics. And that was the first real time I had a gin, and I was like, wow, there's so many complex like flavors to it. Even with tonic water, it's not masked. And it was the shitty well gin. And I was like, fuck yeah, this shit's good. So that's when I was like, hey, let me try different gin. And then a different one and a different one. And I realized that each gin has its own unique flavor. Yeah, they're all labeled as gin, but they're also all unique in their own way.
Yes,
Because
very
the
much so.
botanicals that they use are all different.
Yep.
So most people have that negative connotation of trying gin, but like hot like gin as a shot is fucking gross.
No, it is not.
No.
Because I will tell you this: I used to shoot. Vodka.
I didn't need an OP change our mind.
I
on
was
that one.
hoping that
Yeah.
you would say something else besides heroin. Thank God.
No, but really, do I look? I'm black. I don't do heroin anyway. So anyway, I used to shoot vodka, but because of when I started working at Murray's, I got there like in December, and it was in the midst of that your whole gym promotion, and because of that, I didn't know any of the bottles, and anytime anybody asked me for a cocktail or a certain thing,
Yeah, I
I had to
walked you guys through
familiarize
31
myself.
gins, and I was like, you need to know everything about this because our customers know nothing about this.
Yeah, and so I went down the line and just tasted everything, and it was crazy to see like the variation and like the different tastes of each gin, and because of that, now I shoot gin.
But here's one thing I do want to mention. I agree with the whole idea of like gin and people having a negative connotation. A lot of spirits, just think of like house parties or family gatherings, and someone's got a bottle of X. Vodka, obviously you can throw in damn near anything, and you get a fairly decent, end product. Whiskey, for the most part, we know to take it straight or mix it with some sort of effervescent soda, Sprite, whatever the case may be. You try that with gin, and you're going to get horrible products. And this is why people have that negative connotation, because they think that because you can't mix it with Coke or Sprite or whatever the case may be, it must not be a quality product. And a lot of people I know have those experiences of being at a house party and the last bottle is a Tanqueray, and they're like, whoa, Tanqueray and Clamato. Like, oh my God, this is horrible. You know?
Jesus, that's
So,
Please don't do
So,
that, people. Please, for the love
if
of
you
God, don't
wanted
do
to
that.
try
that was my
gin.
sister one time. She drank tequila and milk because they were out of juice.
Wait, what?
add coffee
Yeah.
to that,
She's
and
single.
that's a fairly decent cocktail.
She's single.
Yo, I did that last night actually. For chocolate
Tequila and milk?
margarita, and I mixed the two together. Fuck it, I
But
gotta
if-
do what I gotta do, man.
If you wanted to try
Wow.
more gin, I will give one warning. Go to a bartender who knows, what they're doing with it. Because
Right.
otherwise, a lot of times, again, most bartenders in this town are used to receiving orders as far as, I call them call drinks, X and X, this and mixer. If you want to experiment with
Yep.
that, you're going to have a bad
Yep.
time. You need to start with the classics. And
So what are some of the classics?
Gimlets,
So we said
South
Old
Sides.
Fashioned was one of them, right?
You
do
could-
that
gin
with
based.
gin?
You could-
Gin
you
based.
could-
I'm asking,
Classic.
can
You
do
could
that
make a
with
gin
gin?
old fashioned. We've got a couple of really great ones, and if you go with like a Genever, which I call them like ancient gins, or just old gins, whatever the case may be, you can make a fairly decent gin old fashioned. But for the most part, gin, if you want to introduce somebody to it, I always go for some sort of sour. A lot of times I do what's called a White Lady variation, which is gin, some sort of citrus liqueur, and your standard sour build, which is equal parts of either lemon and lime and simple syrup. And again, there's a lot of things you can do with that category. You can change your syrups. Death & Co. has this thing called the potato head method, where you would swap out the eyes for the eyes, the sugar for a different sugar. As long as they're all made identical, you can swap any single one of those out. And that's what's great about being the craft bartenders, is we're basically been given the building blocks to build the same building with different flair.
So
Yeah,
can I
I
call out a cocktail that I made once? It involves gin, green tea, a little bit of apricot
Dude, I tried
liqueur, and kiwi. And shit's fucking amazing. Now,
Can you make me that right now?
no, because
Right
I'm
on,
at a
right on,
craft
beer
beer bar. So
But
no.
like the cocktail that I like to make to introduce people to gin, and also to egg white, because a lot of people like freak out about egg white in cocktails too.
Dude, I love egg white.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the way I make my South Side is with gin, egg white, and I do cucumber, mint, lime, and everything, and that introduces them to two things: gin and egg white, because they're not used to either. And
I
it's
think
just like, this is really
you've made
good.
me that at Blackbird.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was, that was a
Blackbird's
great
known
cocktail.
for their egg white South Sides. Like
Are you-
it's a good modern interpretation of the classic.
Or like that's why that's why I used to make this like the hot girl in the corner to that
Yeah.
girl. So I used to make this drink for this girl because it was pretty much the cocktail base is a fancy like vodka sour, pretty much a really fancy vodka sour. But I would put an egg white and draw shit on it, and it became like mind blowing to her. It wasn't a good drink.
But it was the experience. The
Were you
experience
drawing
of,
a dick on it?
Oh, for her,
No.
actually, I did.
Actually, yes, he would. He would spend the time, and it was ridiculous.
It was immaculate. My
But-
dick drawings are on point.
We need pictures of those
I
on
think the
Lips
staff
Libations.
kind of realized that wasn't the best of cocktails.
Well, our producer is shaking her head so fucking hard right now. You guys have no idea.
No, but it's also some other
Yeah, she's
douchebag
not
thing that I
happy.
do. I'll draw half a heart and then like, here, you have my other half. And
Oh God.
dude,
Ah,
dude,
dude.
panty dropping, dude.
You
Panty
probably
dropping
get
all
laid
day.
all
Dude,
none of the time.
I'm a piece of shit. I'm like behind the bar. I was just doing my douchebag thing, and girls love it. Why do girls love douchebags? I do
You
not
think.
understand that.
You think, but they don't. No one loves you, B.
Hey.
Why
Wow.
is the phone on?
Can you be
So
professional,
it's
please?
my nephew. Sorry.
Right, my
Who
shit
would
was
be
like
also-
twice,
a
dude.
little nephew's got a
Jesus.
fucking smartwatch, and he's like 7. He calls me 10 fucking times a day.
He
Wah,
loves you
wah.
though.
Oh, fuck that guy.
Have you seen my Pokemon cards?
So I think the takeaway here is at the end of the day, don't be afraid of anybody who's doing something different behind the bar. Be afraid of inexperienced people, right? That is takeaway number one is people who are behind the bar and know what they're doing. Just going back to the chef thing, is everybody that graduates from culinary school can be called a chef, but on the grades stand out above the rest. So just because you're a bartender doesn't mean you can't be a great bartender. So don't be afraid of trying new things. Be afraid of doing it with the wrong people. The people who don't know what they're doing. The people who are afraid to experience new flavors, new combinations, to go out of their way to make things taste better.
All right.
Also, Murray's is the saddest gay bar in town. I'd like to bring that up. Saddest gay bar in
Caesar
town. Caesar
doesn't
just-
have anything to say.
We do have gay pride handles.
Gay pride
And
what?
Margaritas fly off our shelves like crazy when the used or My Chemical Romance are playing.
Although
So-
there's nothing cool about working a busy shift and having you play like Disney music and have everybody walk
That's
out.
What is
with
wrong with
fucking
that?
money.
That's Joe Boots.
all the time.
Because last time he did this, we had a couple that they had like a $150 tab, and they literally told Michelle, "Yeah, we gotta go because we can't deal with this shit." And then like, you made us lose money, piece of shit.
No, you, what
Hold
you
on,
gotta
hold
do
on.
is you
What
gotta tell 'em,
Disney
like,
song
look,
was
hold
it
on,
though? Because this is one
stay
of the bad
here.
ones. I
Huh?
understand. But if it's good Disney songs, I mean, I'm with it.
Yeah,
No.
like he could have shown them the world.
Oh god.
Instead,
Come
he-
on.
he could've
Shining,
retired.
shimmering splendor.
I'm glad people know.
Yeah.
He wants to be where the people are.
It didn't cost you anything.
You can tell who has kids here.
Yeah.
All right, so
Anyway.
I kind of want to end with like a random story and then get your opinions on what you guys would have done. But
Punch her in the face.
No, I would have not sold him that 12 pack.
I don't regret what I did. So fuck
Shout
it.
out to Black Orchid.
Shout out to Black Orchid.
Oh wait.
What? Yeah,
We'll
Patrick
get-
said it. Shout
Yeah.
out Black Orchid.
All right.
Did what I did.
You were
But I
talking
think-
so much shit about him
mean,
last time, and all
I
of a
think
sudden
he
this
wants
time
to-
it's
That
like,
was all the
No,
bonus
he
episode.
wants, to, he wants to correct himself.
Yo,
He wants to call
okay.
out the next.
No, correct
The-
himself. There's nothing
the
to correct.
worst-
That was
going
the
back-
truest shit he's ever said.
Going back to Jono's question, what is the worst craft cocktail bar in El Paso? It has to be Palates. I am sorry, but that is the honest truth. I know what I said last time, but I was just holding a little bit of anger inside, you know. But honestly, Palates.
Cocktail bar, bro? Like,
They
that would-
want
the
to be
fact
known
that
as
you
one.
asked.
They have never
They
decided,
want to be
like,
known
you know
as
what,
one.
I'm gonna have
Yeah.
a badass cocktail. Let me go to Palace. That was never like top 10.
I'll say this much about bad
Out of the
craft
seven in El
Craft
Paso.
cocktail bars
A
in
lot
El
of-
Paso?
bad craft
Probably
bars.
So I'm
not.
saying out of
Probably
the
not,
seven
probably
there
not.
is, that wasn't even top 10.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was.
I think palates can be bunched into this category, right? Where you have great bartenders or these bartenders that want to try, and you're limited by your administration. That is the death of many a
Yeah.
great craft bar.
I can
Yeah.
definitely say
That happens a lot.
the owner at Palates is shit.
Because I've
He
had
is
conversations
shit,
with Toyo,
dude.
and he walks in and he's like, "Man, I wish I had this. I had this." And I was like,
Yeah.
"How the hell don't you have Fernet on your back bar?" And you're like identifying. How don't you have these ryes? And he's just like,
Yeah.
"Man, like I got to do with what I have."
Yeah.
Case in point, there's a great craft bartender out in the Northeast at 3 Pints,
Yeah.
trying to do great stuff, making old fashions with Jack Daniels and Angostura and this and that. And he did no molded ice cubes, but this guy is trying as hard as he can, right? And it's cool that he's doing that, but again, like he's trying to identify
Limited.
it, but the administration doesn't allow him because one is, I mean, that I'll admit, if you want to be rolling in it, like if we had a craft takeover at EPTX, we'd be broke.
Yeah, definitely.
Like hot chicks and champagnes are bread and butter.
Honestly.
Like sometimes you got to stick with the formula, and I mean,
But see, like that's the
That's what
thing.
kids
Like
build.
whenever I see like a post on Instagram or something like that, I'm not like, damn, I want to go there for them titties.
yeah.
No, it's
But we're different drinkers. That's the thing.
Yeah.
They're appealing
Yeah.
to what people think is
The mass
the
majority.
standard.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Here in
I
El
don't
Paso,
understand
yeah.
those guys that have the audacity to be like, "You're still beautiful." You don't know her.
Yeah.
Like
You could be a horrible human being.
The beef, she's
Yeah,
beautiful.
exactly.
Wait, hold on.
She could be
They're
horrible.
worse than
She's
these,
talking to 7
surprisingly.
different guys and has 3
Hold
baby
on.
daddies.
Yeah.
Also,
we all know
the
that
guy who like
bartender started
thrives in
kid. Anyway,
Jabaggery
real
is
quick.
all like, "Oh, but she's a horrible human being." It's like,
We
"Ah,
screen
you
our
you
girls,
are
and they're there
just
for
like
a reason. They move mountains of money.
No, I mean, I
Yeah,
wish.
yeah,
I
yeah.
literally wish I had those tits. If I had a daughter,
you
and
look
she's
really
like-
weird.
Wait, whoa, hold on. This is cut the mic. Cut the mic.
real quick. What is the story? God
Yes,
damn
let's
it.
go back to the story.
That you wanted
Oh,
to get
man.
through because we're
Okay.
running out of time here.
I got a flight to catch. Come on, let's do
Yeah.
this.
All right, you still got time. All right, so on my way over here, I was walking down the street, and this homeless guy just called me and said, hey, come over here. All right, fuck
Why
it.
would you go?
I'll see what's up.
Why would
I will
you
see.
go?
I have nothing
Didn't
else.
you almost get mugged? Like,
If this
Oh,
story
yeah.
ends
Yeah.
with
Show
he
you.
showed
That
you
was a
his
different
penis,
story.
Homeless
I feel
guy-
like we all deserve a drink.
So that's a different story. But so you know what? Fuck it. I got nothing else going on this Sunday. Plan on getting drunk. I'll just talk to this guy. So I go over to him like, "What's up, man?" It's like, "Hey, look, I know you heard a lot of crazy things in your life." And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been a bartender for shit ton of years now. Go ahead, lay it on me. What's the craziest thing you got for me?" "Hey, man, well, I'm actually Jesus Christ reborn." All right.
Yes, my lord.
So, what I want to tell you is that I like to smoke. I'm like, "Oh, fuck yeah, JC, you like the marijuana? Fuck yeah." Like, that's what the burning bush is all about. I was like, no. I smoke cigarettes. I'm like, oh, well, all right. What's up, JC? What you want? Well, I want to tell you that I can tell you're a good person if you give me some money so I can buy a pack of cigarettes. Like, all right. Yeah. So if you give me money, buy a pack of cigarettes, I will give you all the best fortunes in the world. But you got to believe that I'm Jesus Christ and that I'm willing to do this for a pack of cigarettes. And I'm just like, no, nigga, I'm broke.
Nah, nigga.
So I just kind of walk away. But then I was thinking, like, what if he really was Jesus? You know, like everyone just kind of dismissed Jesus, and then the Jews killed him. What if he really was? What would you guys have done?
Patrick, I would have not talked to that guy in the beginning. I'm from the,
Dude, I don't even stop.
I'm not from the
I
Northeast.
don't stop for people.
Everybody from the Northeast knows. Don't fucking like.
Everybody
answer
from
a
the
hobo.
Northeast
No.
is Jesus.
You tell, get the fuck away from me.
It's 4
Back the
a.m.
fuck up.
Get away.
Yeah.
Also, why is another homeless guy blowing you? I don't understand why you're trying to convince me of
Jesus
things.
Christ.
Jesus,
What's
man.
wrong with you, Patrick?
Oh Jesus.
Oh Jesus.
Anyway, all right. Well, we're about done here. We're gonna end on that note. I want to thank Caesar from Murray's coming out.
Thank you.
Spitting some knowledge.
For having
Thank you
me
very much. I want to thank Beeve, Adrian, Patrick, Jono for bringing the sound equipment. My beautiful girlfriend Jennifer for
Being the
editing all the
producer.
stuff and producing the stuff and taking the
Shout out to her.
pictures.
I don't know why she's dressed like
Go
Wednesday
to Drunken
Addams,
Ears,
but
Oh right.
sister/brother channel of Lift and Libations.
Oh, hold on.
We're
Let me
in-
plug my own shit before I plug
Oh,
yours,
shit.
man.
Oh,
Shit.
fuck, man.
All right, so yeah, like, subscribe.
I don't know why he's
follow
so angry.
SoundCloud, iTunes. We're about to bust out that YouTube and the Spotify.
If you listen to iTunes and you don't mind, please give us a 5-star review. Really helps out with visibility. If you don't like it, keep it a
Visibility.
5-star review anyway. Just that'll show us, right? Just leave a comment telling us we suck or something.
Yeah,
There
if
you
you don't
go.
like it,
Start.
fuck it. Tell us.
Because then we'll read
Worst
it.
Or why don't you send
podcast
us a
ever, let's
message?
shame
Come
them
on the
5 stars.
podcast. Why don't you come on? Talk
Anyway,
to
but
us.
yeah,
If you're a hipster, give us that 5-star. Ironically, that's cool with us. We're not gonna judge you.
but yeah, also plugging the Drunken Ears channel, sister
Hey.
channel by Adrian. It's a actually explain it, please.
It's well, every time we get done here with this podcast, we're nice and saucy. So we decided this channel was about drinking and playing games. So what better to go home and play games while we're already nice and sauce. So I am your host there, Sir Alpha, and we got Dark Mist aka Patrick and the Gravest aka Darren joining me for whatever it is we decide to do.
Yup.
All right.
Their sister channel, links will be down below.
hell
All
yeah.
right, so thank you guys. That was a great episode, and we'll see y'all next time.
Woo-woo.
Peace.
There.
Penis.